I want to go ahead and introduce today's webinar session. Welcome, everyone. My name is Alejandra Arguelles. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Today, our wide session is focused on our first generation Jacobs School of Engineering faculty. So we have some great information prepared for you all. You'll hear about their journey as well as kind of learn what led them to academia, but also just kind of learn from their own accomplishments as you navigate your own journey here at UC San Diego. We'll go ahead and get started with introductions. Professor Tina, if you would like to go first.
Hi, I'm Tina at the ECE Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. Is that type of introduction, or you want more information, Alexandra? Maybe for now.
For now, thank you. And then Professor Moscato.
Hi, my name is Gilberto Mosqueda. I'm a professor in the Department of Structural Engineering. I've been here at ECSD going probably close to 10 years now. And I teach undergraduate classes, graduate classes, and also do research in the area of earthquake engineering, looking at how to design buildings to better resist earthquakes.
And I'll go next, I guess. Yeah, this is Boris Kramer. I'm an assistant professor in mechanical and aerospace engineering. This is my second year at UCSD, so I'm fairly new to the environment. And unfortunately, the whole second year has been COVID struck, but it's been a great start here. My research is in computational methods and applied mathematics to engineering problems, particularly surrogate modeling, but also uncertainty quantification. I teach courses both in our undergraduate curriculum, but also in the graduate division. And yeah, I'm happy to share some of my experiences in the past as a first-gen student as part of this panel, and looking forward to meet all of you all.
Thank you so much. For this webinar today, we do encourage you to be active in the Q&A. If there's any questions that come up for you. In the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started with some other questions that I've prepared. What was it like being the first in your family to go to college? Professor Mosqueda, we'll go ahead and start off with you.
It was a lot of unknowns, I guess. I mean, I did have older siblings that went to college. I was the first to explore STEM-related field. And I think along with that, there came a lot of uncertainty beginning from, when we started college, is like, what is engineering? And not having anybody to ask, not knowing anybody, to ask, like, what type of engineering, I like math, what should I do? So it's just not having, I guess, access to people that could answer some of your questions. But I think once I arrived at the university, there was quite a bit of support network, with programs like the Idea Center. I did my undergraduate at UC Irvine, so not too far from here. And, there was a lot of programs like the Idea Center that were structured in helping in supporting first generation students, underrepresented students, and really help me to find my way, especially in the area of research, to introduce me a little bit about what research was. So it is challenging, but I think, you have to be able to, I guess, find your place and find your, within your friends, within the university, a support network to help you get through it. And that could include all the way through professors that could be mentors to you to help you, get those questions answered and help guide you in a path that to find where you want to go. I don't want to take up too much time. I could keep going, but.
Thank you. Professor Tina.
Yeah, like Gilberto, it was eye-opening. There's a lot of things that I didn't expect, and And actually, yeah, you need to find your support network. Just not be afraid to ask questions from, like, you know, staff to faculty or even your own senior people who has gone through it like 1 year ahead of you. That's just easiest to get information from them. They will be happy to talk actually and complain, right? So those are really good avenues to find your way through it. And really the first thing you were open to is, I just realized there's so many things I didn't know, and that's the same for a lot of people. So don't be afraid. It's just unknowns out there, and you're just there to explore.
Yeah. Professor Cameron?
Yeah, so maybe I'll fill in a little bit. My story is probably similar than Gilberto, just on a different continent, basically. I hail from Germany, and so I grew up in a household with, you know, my dad was a car mechanic. I was very, very interested in working on cars all the time. But eventually I figured with good grades in math and physics, I should kind of go study. And for me, I had an older brother who is more on the business side. So I was also the first one to go into STEM. And yeah, same questions came around. Like, I kind of knew on the practical side what engineers are doing. I mean, they build bridges, they build cars, they do stuff. But how do you actually, like, what are they doing 8 hours a day in an office? You know, what kind of computations do you have to do? How do you do design? How do you, what's the scientific kind of rigor to how you do any of these things? I had no clue. And then as Tina said, you know, you go and you ask other people, like, you know, some people that you know in your town or somewhere, they're 2 years ahead of you. So you ask them, you know, what's mechanical engineering like? What's structural engineering like? Um, at the end, I actually settled for a degree in math because someone told me, who was like 3 or 4 years older than me, told me, well, if you do math, you can go into the engineering later, because every engineering is full of math. But if you do engineering, it might be hard to go into the math department. And so I was like, well, I'll take it. So I started studying math, and then was always more inclined to do the applied math side. And then just going through college, I mean, oftentimes you don't know who to talk to. Certainly approaching, to me, it was strange approaching a professor. And now I'm actually wanting to tell you that it's perfectly fine to approach a professor, because we would like to talk to you, we'd like to hear from you. But no one told me that at the time, and you just felt like you're sitting there in class and try to make it out as fast as you can, because the whole environment seemed a bit intimidating. But eventually, you know, you just gain confidence in your skills, and you know, the first good grades come around, and then you start meeting people, and eventually you're kind of in it, and you're part of it, and then it's up to you what you make out of it. But I think especially here in the US, there's a very good support system, I feel, compared to what I've seen in Europe. Very good support system here to help people through the way. And you know, we get paid as part of our job is, you know, obviously teaching, service, outreach, helping you all. That's part of our job. So you're not taking away from our time. We're actually paid to do that. So, you know, always feel free to reach out. And I think that's the number one thing. You got to talk to people. You got to talk to us, the teachers and the TAs and your peers. And that's the rate to really help each other.
Thank you. For the next question, I would like to ask our panelists is, tell us about your journey and what you think helped you succeed in becoming a faculty member at UCSD. Professor Moscato.
Okay. So what really set me on this path, I think, one of the last things I mentioned previously was mentorship, and kind of starting going back and starting from the beginning though. And I want to hit on also a point that Boris brought up, because I think that's kind of what at least to me made the difference. And like I said, I went to UC Irvine. I grew up in LA, and went to the LA inner city schools. And then you get to college and you're like, what the heck? In terms of the level of difficulty, you know, it's a whole different level. I mean, I did pretty good. I wouldn't even consider myself near the top student in my high school. I know admission is a lot different now. So getting to college was like, you know, you do get a little bit of that imposter syndrome. And I think I've gotten at almost every level. And you're like, what the heck am I doing here? And I struggled my first year in college. And it wasn't made till like my sophomore year that I was able to gain the confidence to think it was something that I could actually do. A lot of that came from, well, I think we'll seeing the results in classes and getting A's, for example. And the other big factor was these programs that I mentioned at the time. I know we had camp here at UC San Diego. I don't think it's no longer here. I think it was the program ended a couple years ago. But I was part of camp at UC Irvine, and we had a summer program, went in as a sub in the summer. And then they kind of kept interacting with us throughout the year. It's very similar to what the Idea Center does, like in terms of the types of activities that I was engaged in. And, you know, we had professors come and talk to us and tell us about the research. And they would always tell us, well, you know, go get involved in undergraduate research and go talk to a professor. So there I go as a sophomore. I had my faculty advisor and a meeting, and I would ask my professor how to get involved in research. And they're like, you're too young, type of thing. But it was a question of what I was asked, and eventually he gave me a chance to work with them, like in the end of my sophomore year. And I started working on research, doing first some coding, some programming, and then later in the lab. And kind of that coupled together, I was noticing, like, you know, gaining more interest and knowing that I could do what I could do and being able to do well in my classes. I started to do much better in my classes. I was getting involved in research. And the project I worked on, the second project I worked on as an undergraduate was I had to build a little model of a building. I had taken, you know, because in high school I was training more for a technical field, I took welding classes. So I did a little steel model, got to weld it myself. And then we had a little model shake table that I got to shake it on. And to me, that was like, this is kind of like, you know, I'm playing in the lab. I'm like building things and destroying them. It kind of reminded me of, you know, little army wars that I had as a kid. And so with my brother, we would build, like, you know, our fortress, and then, you know, throw rocks at them and try to destroy them. And so this is what I was doing. I was building models and shaking them until they broke. And it was just like a hobby. And I really liked I really enjoyed doing that. And that's really what set me, I think, on this journey to want to do research. And it was, you know, I think all this was really due to having a mentor that gave me the opportunity to do very unique research. And I think I had probably a more hands-off approach than most undergraduates do. I think I was doing maybe, and that I recognized at the time, the grad student that I was working with kind of disappeared. So I kind of got the lab to myself. And it was just a great experience for me. And from that point on, you know, I had an excellent mentor. I still talk to him. I mean, he's at Irvine, retired. He still lives in the area. And I haven't gone during COVID times, but I usually go every now and then, and we meet up for a drink or something. So it's building that, you know, kind of next level relationship with your mentor. And like every step of the way, you know, when I was going to grad school, you know, where should I go for my PhD program? Where should I go? And then I started, you know, looking at other careers, and he, you know, encouraged me to apply for faculty positions. And I'm very fortunate, I feel, to end up at UC San Diego. I mean, faculty positions are very limited. I spent several years in Buffalo, and I'm very fortunate to be able to come back to UC San Diego, where I'm close to home. You know, great location, great university, one of the top universities in the world. And I mentioned in my career, I was always driven by the shake tables, right? The little toy I started playing with at UC Irvine. I did my PhD at Berkeley because at the time they had the biggest shake tables. Buffalo had built 2 shake tables when I first got there. And I'm here at UC San Diego, and we're building like the largest, well, we have the largest shake table, but now we're upgrading it. We had like a $16 million grant from the National Science Foundation to upgrade it, to have it move like in all 3 degrees of freedom. So it's certainly an honor to be here, and I feel very fortunate to follow that path and, you know, be able to do what I like to do. And I'm still making toy models, a lot bigger now, and breaking them on shaking tables.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it was the mentorship, I think, really that got me to where I am today.
What I want to add is that we have a lot of mentorship programs at UCSD, especially through the Jacobs School of Engineering. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about those programs. Professor Kramer. So again, tell us about your journey and what you think helped you succeed in becoming a faculty member at UCSD.
Yeah, sure. So my journey was, obviously started in Germany for a little bit for undergraduate, and then I started coming to the US originally only as an exchange student, but I kind of liked it so much. I felt the system was so much more open, so much more conducive to asking questions, having more time with professors, having more of their attention. And I had a great advisor too for my master thesis, and then I continued to stay for a PhD thesis. And I think every step along the way, when I was an undergrad, I worked, but I worked simple jobs. I didn't do internships at like engineering companies. I basically just did jobs on the side to kind of make money as I was going along in my undergrad. And all the while, all the, I would say, the more maybe affluent or the not first generation students were obviously working at in Germany at like Bosch and Siemens and Airbus and doing all these cool internships, and I wasn't doing any of them. But then once I got into grad school, I was like, well, I got to catch up and do some of it. And there was always this notion of should I continue to go down an academic route or should I go into industry? And obviously the industry always waves with like the big bucks, and they're like, oh, you can be successful here, you can make money here, all the cool stuff, you can travel. So I went and did a few internships at an insurance company just to see what financial mathematics looks like. And every time I did an internship, I kind of felt just not happy afterwards. I mean, that the experience was great, but I always felt like someone tells me what to do, and I just have to do it without asking too many questions, like run this analysis, do this, and then report it to me, kind of thing. And I noticed that the people that got the coolest work to do were the ones that had PhDs and the ones that actually were able to think critical. And so then I went on this journey and said, okay, now I really want to know more. I wrote a master thesis and I felt I knew nothing. So I was like, I definitely want to do a PhD. And then I did a PhD, and so after I finished the PhD, it was kind of the same feeling. Unfortunately, I knew a slice of something, but there's so much I didn't know. And I was like, well, now I got to do a postdoc. And so then I started doing a postdoc and explored a little bit more topics aside from my PhD area. And then along the way of the postdoc, I just kept asking more questions, and I was like, well, how about this? And this seems unfinished business, and that would be kind of cool to do. And so I think this all kind of drove me further to kind of continue and then end up at UCSD, where I said, I have all these open questions, and all these questions I would like to answer long term. And obviously the best environment to do that is at a university where you can, get tenure and you can pursue your own research interest and your research agenda. And that felt like the right setting. So I think for me, I did have a great PhD mentor who was very supportive. But ultimately, I felt like it was me who kind of always asked more questions and kind of kept motivating myself to do the next step and convincing myself that I just don't know everything I would like to know, and always kind of like go to the next step. I was fortunate enough that along the way, I did get help. I had colleagues that I could talk to and got feedback from, and I could make it on this journey. But I think the best thing along the way is just talking to your peers. Your peers change. So some of the people I studied with undergrad, I'm no longer in touch with, but your peers always change as you move on. And peers I feel are the best source of just feedback you can get, and the best source of help, because many of them have been through the same situation. Whether they be at this point, at some point, it really doesn't. Once you're kind of kicked off, I felt, later now that I'm here, I really can talk to. UCSD has a great support network, and you can talk to just about anyone, and we'll get some good help. So yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
sharing that. Professor Tina.
Yeah. So my journey actually started in undergrad where I was doing outreach and I was actually a chemistry major, not electrical computer engineering. So in chemistry, you have a lot of hands-on projects and the outreach to kids were really fun to do. So from then I also were like playing with things and I was like, this is really fun. I want to play with things and not stuck at a desk, doing I also have other jobs in college because I need to pay my way, right? So I find those type of lab manager, a lab assistant job that's much more fun for me. And so from then on, I get to know the faculty much better because I'm their TAs, right? And lab assistant. And then they tell me, oh, if you want to go to graduate school, you don't need to pay in engineering. They pay you a stipend to do it. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Of course, then I want to, get paid to do something that I like. So that's how I got into PhD programs. So yeah, a lot of times just do your best at the job that you have and people will tell you things. They see potential in you and then they bring you new information that you can use to push yourself further. And then for after PhD, I actually didn't want to go to academia because I thought my whole life has been spent in school. So I asked my advisor for internship in industry. And actually, I worked in industry for 9 years before coming back, and I really love it. Industry has a different environment and it does have better money. But at the same time, you have less freedom. And freedom is what attracts me to come back to academia. And also, you have the mission of education, right? And that's a really good mission, not just bottom line of shareholder price. So there's different attraction. And so that's how I came back 5 years ago, back to academia. And that process also have some help along the way. My previous boss who worked with me in industry become an academic and then she know the position opened, within UC. And so she forwarded me uh, the position and say, hey, maybe you should look into this. You might like it. And so, yeah, again, it's somebody opening the door and letting you know that maybe you can look into a new opportunity. So that's how I get to here.
We have one question in the Q&A. Again, I encourage you to ask questions that come up. So looking back, what are some things you would tell your previous self when you first started college? Professor Kramer.
I think it's a great question because many of us are I look back and I said like, oh, gosh, I had done this differently. And I think the main thing would be just to reach out and to ask questions. You will, there's, are there mistakes that I might have made at some point? Yes, I did, but I learned something from them, and so some of the mistakes I actually would not even want to avoid. So I don't want to go back and change something that I learned something from. But the one thing I could have learned even more if I had asked more questions, I feel. And I think that's the main thing I would change, just be more open and understanding that the other side, which is the people you talk to, are most of the time very, very open and to helping you and want to help you. I mean, it's our mission to do that. And so I would just encourage you to ask more questions, to if you're in a class, go to the office hours, be prepared, with one good question, and that always stands out. Nowadays, when I'm on the other side and I, see students join my office hours, it's hard when you have a class of 150 students to remember people. But if someone shows up in your office hour consistently and has even just one good question, that is very, very helpful. At the end of the day, if you're a first-gen student or not a first-gen student, whoever you are, if you want to continue in your career, at some point you need something that's called recommendation letters. And for it doesn't matter who you are, you need them for all type of job, for industry references, for academia, even more so. And if it was hard at some point for me to come up with letters, when I was a student, I was like, who should I ask? What should I do? And I noticed I got myself into trouble just by the way I didn't ask questions, or I didn't introduce myself to the professors. I didn't show up at the office hours, and all of that would have helped for a professor to say, yes, yeah, sure, I've seen Boris in my office hours. He's been lively, asked questions. I can write something well about him. So I think that's one thing you shouldn't underestimate, that all of us. I also need recommendation letters from senior colleagues. All of us at some point in this whole system need recommendations all the time, and those are some things that will, make your career smoother and make you get that job in industry or at the national lab or in the position in grad school. So just asking more and being more engaged, as hard as it is as a first gen student, would have, I think, helped me even more so if I was to go back.
Professor Moscato. Oh, you're still on mute.
Sorry, Mira, I had a little bit of background noise with kids running around the house here. Yeah, so a lot of lessons learned along the way. And I think probably the most important one for me too was what Boris mentioned in terms of being able to ask more questions, to not be shy, to have, be more bold, be more brave, ask more questions in class, in office hours, or go to office hours, and don't be so scared of professors. We don't bite most of the time. But it's that's a very important point in getting to know professors and them getting to know you. And that's, one key thing. I think if one thing you could get out of, especially if you're approaching your like junior or senior level classes, you need to have good contact with professors that are going to write you letters of recommendation. And that's probably not just for college, that's in life in general. Just be more bold and ask questions. What's the worst that can happen, right? People are going to tell you no, might hurt your feelings, so well, get over it and move on, right? It's not going to hold you down for a long time. So yeah, just ask more questions. And then the other one is that I wish I would have done a little bit earlier is study groups, to form those a little bit earlier on. I mentioned I struggled my first year. Second year, I started kind of turning things around a little bit. And I think a big part of that was study groups and recognizing that, I really couldn't learn from going to lecture and, hearing the professor talk for an hour. You kind of get some stuff, but I think where things really made sense was when you're in your study group and you're talking about the homework, you're interacting with others about the problems, and whether it is you are teaching them or they are teaching you, either way you win, because I felt like, when I was explaining something to someone, I learned it better, right? By trying to figure out or thinking about a way to explain a concept. So that's what I have to do now as a teacher all the time. But, I think as a student, I think that's what helped me a little bit more and understand the classes then. And yeah, when we teach a class, there's probably topics that I know very well, others that I don't, that I have to teach. And how do I learn it very well? Well, maybe read 2 or 3 textbooks. I got to teach it. I got to, be so comfortable that I have to talk about it myself. And that's how you really get to know the material. Right? So being able to talk about it.
Professor Tina.
Yeah, for what would I tell myself? Maybe don't be so hard on yourself when you have failures, just like what we have been saying. Like, failures is what you use to learn. So sometimes I get so disappointed, but at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter. It's just part of the process. Yeah, so just don't get discouraged too easily and just keep trying.
Thank you all for sharing that. For my next question is, what were some of the unique challenges you faced as a first generation student? How did you overcome them? Professor Kramer.
Sorry, always this mute button. Yeah, I mean, unique challenges, I think they're unique to first generation students is that, you just don't have necessarily the support network. And, when I talked at the beginning that I didn't have necessarily the internship experience that I wanted or that I noticed I should have had in hindsight, a lot of friends were doing stuff. Some of the reasons or ways they found their internships is because, uncle works at, Siemens or one of the big companies, or dad works there and something works out, or mom knows a friend. And there's a lot of network and connections that you don't necessarily have. And, once you have these connections, obviously it makes it easier. Now you go into the company, you're an intern, you're the son of X, daughter of X, and you're just being treated a little bit differently. And I think that is a challenge we have to overcome as first generation students, because we, like I said, my dad was a car mechanic. If I was going to an engineering company and tell them about my dad, they necessarily, I mean, they don't know him as a person or anything, but they know I'm not coming from that, academic background. And I think, yeah, just this has been a challenge and maybe slowed down at the beginning. And, it just made maybe the first 2 or 3 years slower than they should have been. But eventually I was able to catch up, and just, once the good grades come in and you start like to notice that, I could go with all these people that are sitting in my class, I can definitely get the same grades than the top students can get. And I kind of know how the system works now. I think then came the confidence and came the time where I was like, okay, I think I can do this. But the first few years are definitely hard. And just because of the lack of maybe role models in your immediate family, the lack of support that maybe some other more privileged, students would have from more privileged backgrounds. But ultimately, that the hard work and just the kind of sticking to it is something that I feel like as a first generation student you have and some other people don't. Because when things come very easy to you and everything's kind of being handed to you, you don't necessarily understand why you need to work hard for something, right? And I think we understand that, hard work gets you somewhere. I mean, it got my family who didn't go to college, to build their own house and do all the things that they wanted to, just by putting in the work and persevering through things. And I think that's just one of the key assets that you should recognize. You have this asset that you understand where work and perseverance can get you, and other students don't necessarily know that. And with that in mind, I think, once again, now sitting on the other side where I'm looking at students, I love first generation students. I mean, I like students with diverse backgrounds. I like the transfers from community college. Oftentimes they work, much harder. They're much more motivated to like prove it to themselves than someone who has been given everything to them. And so as faculty, we definitely recognize that, and we're very happy to help as much as we can to even out the playing field from day one.
Professor Moscato.
So these are the unique challenges. So there's, I think that there again, it's the trend. I think it's the transition and starting in college and not knowing a whole lot of, not knowing a lot of people. And I think to a big extent, maybe not having the confidence that you could do this, not believing in yourself that you could do this. And to some extent saying, well, it's okay if I got a C because, I'm not as prepared as some of my colleagues. And I mean, I could tell you now, I grew up in LA in inner city schools. Right now, I live in the suburbs here in San Diego, a middle class environment. And I look at what my kids are doing in school. I mean, my kids are 10th grade and they're taking calculus AB, which I took in 12th grade. It was like an honors class. And so it's a very different environment, the type of school structure they have versus what I had, right? I think my school offered like 2 AP classes or something like that. And so when you get to college and you're mixed in with all these students, it's a very different level of preparation. And so you do feel it. But that doesn't mean you can't catch up. And what that means is it's going to take a lot of effort, a lot of hard work to get there. To me, it was kind of that transition. My first year, I didn't do so well. Second year, I started doing a lot better, but it took a lot of work. It took a lot of hard work to do that, to not only catch up, but to say the average even of the class, but to be able to reconcile with one of the top students in the class. It just took a lot of work and dedication, and it was the study groups, the mentorship. I think it was everything combined that kind of gave me the confidence to believe that I could do this. And once I feel like once I was there, and your professors begin to recognize you, then you get more confident, and then you're able to do well in college. And then GPA is always the first number people look at, and as unfortunate as that is, once I started doing well and getting good grades, then all doors opened up a lot easier for me. And so that's somewhere to start, right? And do well in your classes, and a lot of doors will open up for you after that. And it could be hard given if you're a first generation student and if you didn't go to one of these high schools like the ones my kids are going to now. It could be a challenging start, but you can do it. It's just going to take a lot of hard work.
Pastor Tina.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is to explain what you're doing to your family as well. So half of the time when they ask me what I'm doing, it takes me like some time to explain to them what I'm doing. So the understanding and communication between parents and you might be a little bit harder because really they have no background and context of what you're doing. And like, why do you even need to go on internship in the summer? Why don't you go home, right? Something that's more like taken for granted for people who have been to college, but not yet for the parent you also need to educate. But I think honestly, like just do your best and then things will open. Yeah, GPA is important, but not the end of the world. It's really the fundamental understanding that you need to succeed in your career, right? It's not the number, but whether you can actually do the work in the future to be an engineer, a good one that you will keep getting hired. And I think to make sure that you can communicate back with your family and to just push them so that you explain to them why this is important, how it impacts society, they will be proud of you. And honestly, like what can go wrong, right? Starting from the bottom, you only have up to go. You can't go any further down, so you're just gonna go up.
I really like that. I think I'll put on a little sticky note. There's only up from here. Thank you. I know it's we have 15 minutes left, so I do encourage again for those that are here to submit any questions you all have. So then, what is your advice to first generation engineering college students interested in pursuing academia or industry? Professor Moscato.
For those interested in pursuing academia or industry, I guess the question is either will I pick one or the other, or
you can pick academia since you are an academia.
Yeah, well, I could look at either, but I'm assuming most students are undergraduates or recent grads, and what I always advise students, especially I teach at the undergraduate level, a junior level class, and so I'm always telling students, really think about grad school. You should really go to grad school, and I always encourage them to get a master's. Master's you should definitely get, and especially like in my field in building bridge design. A master's really pays off in terms of the types of projects you could do, and most of the good companies only look at master's students. But I never push anybody to get a PhD. I think the PhD has to come from within you, because it is a very challenging process. It's something you really gotta want. It's something you really gotta like, and you really gotta like the research. I did have a student that I talked to about, going on to a master's, and he was kind of started getting interested in PhD, and after a while, like, no, this is not for me. And I think that says a lot in terms of, it's something you really, really gotta want, because it is, it's a pretty tough process. And if it's the research you like, I mean, I really like the research. I really like the teaching. I love the flexibility of my job. So, and I feel very fortunate again to, have this position, especially at a place like UCSD. And, I think I couldn't say enough about the benefits of the job. But it is, I think the PhD process in particular, I mean, there was, and, talking to some of my colleagues who were doing the PhD, it's like, there was points where like, what am I doing here? We're working on the same project for 2-3 years. So it is a challenging process that, make sure it's something you really, really want to do.
Professor Kramer.
Yeah, I agree fully with Gilberto that it's very, very important that you have the right motivation for, you always, at every stage you make a decision, you should always give a very hard look at the alternatives. So just because you have been 4 years in school doesn't mean you have to be another 5 years in school. Just because that's the only thing you've known so far doesn't mean that there's nothing else out there. So, as you're, I agree also fully that we have some nice programs here, the BSMS programs that sometimes only take you 1 year, and you have a master's, and all of a sudden you get out there and get to do a lot more interesting stuff than someone with a bachelor's degree gets to do. But the PhD level really needs to come from you having looked at all the alternatives and saying, okay, I don't want to work at, that earthquake company, or I don't want to work at Amazon or Google or at McKinsey or at an NGO or at some startup. I really thought, or the national labs or wherever you want to work, I really thought about, I have the curiosity, the drive, and the perseverance to, stick through 4 or 5 years and doing my PhD. And things aren't always easy. There'll be setbacks after a year, after 2 years, after 3 years. You might have to change your direction. Something that I did, I got right after my master's, wrote my master's thesis, had a couple of questions from there and started working on those. And then after a year, 1.5, I noticed that I was in a field at the time that was extremely, I kind of wanted to do that, but my faculty advisor, my professor was not necessarily very active in that field. It was a curiosity of mine, and he said, yeah, I'll support you, I'll ask, we'll do this. But then I noticed that I was the only guy doing this in my group, and here are all the massive groups from Europe that were publishing papers on this stuff, like 15 papers a year, and I was just chasing, and I was being stressed out about always being in a competition. So I noticed I had to change my direction to have some time to think through problems without having the pressure of competing with other groups for stuff. And so there's changes in directions in grad school, and you'll have to go through those. But just make sure you're aware of all of this, all the challenges a graduate education will bring, but also all the great things it brings. You get to explore, you get to write your own thing. Your final thesis is your own product that you wrote. that you should be proud of. But adding to this, regardless if you go to academia or industry, what I've already said before is the advice I would give you is make sure you talk to people early enough. Either way you're going, you do need letters. So make sure you talk to us and you're well prepared so you can get the job that you like. And sometimes this depends on the letters you have. If we all don't know you and we can only write fairly bland letters, then it's hard to get the right job. But if everyone can write a stellar letter about you because we've met you, we've seen your curiosity, your interest, your intellect, then that's half the job already. So make sure you talk to people, and so you can get to your dreams and you can reach your goals. Sometimes you need a little bit of help, and make sure you get that help. We're here for you.
Professor Tina?
Yeah, I agree with Boris. Look at alternatives. Don't just think, oh, my friends are doing this, so I should do that as well. You have to be honest with yourself, whether that is important to you, money or not. Exactly the same thing, right? If you want to go to industry only because of the money, is that really the most important thing to you at that time, right? Sometimes that 200K salary looks good, but if your lifestyle is not something you want, you will be miserable in that lifestyle. So yeah, just be honest with yourself and think about what you really want to do, and then be committed, right? If you're doing a PhD, it is tough, but most of the time, once you are admitted, it means you actually can make do it if you are committed. So yeah, that's what I would say.
There's one question in the Q&A. Did anything surprise you after getting into academia? We'll go with Professor Tina.
Oh, something that surprises.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit. It's a full-time job, as in you never turn yourself off. In industry, sometimes you have peers that are the same level as you, so you can hand over your thing when you go on vacation and completely unplug. But once you're faculty, you really don't have that luxury to hand over your job to someone else. So even when you're on vacation or late at night, you think back at, oh, what do I have to do with my student? Yeah, so it's a little bit of, you need to learn how to unplug yourself, force yourself to do it. In industry, it's a little bit easier because you have peers that are not directly dependent on you. I mean, you do manage the team and their livelihood depends on you, but they are grown-ups, right? They are not young people. So yeah, that's the difference.
Professor Kramer?
It's a interesting question. Has anything surprised me? I mean, surprises are on a weekly basis. When you sometimes think that things are straightforward and they aren't. But I think what really surprised me is that, I mean, just the process of research. I didn't know what it takes to do research, what it takes to answer questions, and it always surprises me that when you start out, you think maybe you have this naive thought of like, oh yeah, we can do this and that, and then this should work pretty well, and then somewhere along the way you just open up another can of worms. But that's the process of research. That's the great thing, and it's at least the reason I am here. I like the process. I always say you never answer questions, you just answered one question, another one opened up. um, and I think that's been more of, I didn't expect that when I first came. I thought, I didn't know how to do research necessarily. No, I mean, none of my parents taught me that, but
Professor Moscato?
I think
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah. I think the and nothing ever ends, or something else going on. Your classes finish, but then the research and other things, you have to have students always keep going. And that's something that maybe not until recently I've been maybe even practicing after doing this almost going on 20 years or so. Maybe 16, 17 years, and to be at least during important holidays, take a couple of days off completely and just unplug and get away from this. But yeah, it is a continuous challenge. New things come up every day, and just involved in so many different things. But and most of these things, like this event, for example, is things that I enjoy doing. So it is certainly rewarding.
We'll go ahead and wrap up. Parting thoughts. What is the last piece of advice do you want to provide our students who are in this webinar? This recording will also be posted on our YouTube channel. We'll start with Professor Kramer.
I think I've said it many times, but can't say it often enough. Don't be shy and ask questions. No one will judge you. Everyone will be, happy and will be supportive and encouraging when you ask these questions. We like our students to succeed. We want to make UCSD that continue to have it being a great brand name, being graduating really good students. Our education here is world class, and it means a lot to us to keep it at that level and to make it even better. So we want to help all of you, and just keep asking questions and keep talking to the people. Reach out to us.
Professor Moscato.
Yeah, I would say it takes have the confidence to believe that you can do this, to succeed and do very well in what you're doing. Take advantage of the resources that are available to you. And that's, the Idea Center, professors, we're all here to help you get to college successfully. And and you got to admit it to UC San Diego because you can't do it, so you can do it. And just it does take a lot of work, but it's possible. So hang in there, and I know these are very different times from what we may be used to, but hang in there, and hopefully we're all in the classroom back in the fall.
And then Professor Tina.
Yeah, likewise, just iterate that reaching out when you feel like you need help. And everyone has imposter syndrome once in a while, including me. And we even have a name for it now, right? Before that, I don't even know how to describe that feeling, but now we all know it's called imposter syndrome. So when you feel like you need some help and confidence boost, just talk to someone, find a way to think about your situation. Yeah, I think we can all do it. Just have confidence in yourself and figure it out with help from others.
Thank you so much. I just want to again thank our great panelists. Thank you for sharing your own story as a first-generation college student and now being a faculty member for the Jacobs School of Engineering. Again, thank you for those who attended as well. As mentioned earlier, this recording will be posted on the Idea Center YouTube channel. Professor Kramer, to our professors here, I'll make sure to share the recording with you if this is something you all would like to look back at or share with some of your own students. Other than that, thank you all so much for attending during your lunchtime hour. And I know we have some thank yous on the Q&A as well, on the chat.
Thank you for organizing.
Yeah, thanks for organizing. It's great.
Thank you, Alejandra.
Thank you all. Have a great Tuesday and a great week 6.
Yeah.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.